Welcome to the Pulpit Porch, previously known as the Small Church Podcast. I'm Tony Marr, and with me is my friend Robert Kell.
Hey everyone, we're glad you're here. The Pulpit Porch is where we kick back, put up our feet, and talk about real life stuff of ministry, faith, community, and maybe a little sports and pop culture.
Yeah, if you're expecting a perfectly polished sermon, you're probably in the wrong place.
We're more about those honest heart-to-heart conversations, like the ones you'd have on the front porch with friends. Sometimes we stay on track, and sometimes we take the scenic route.
That's half the fun, isn't it? Here we tackle the highs, the lows, and the in-betweens of church and of life. Every now and then, we'll welcome a few friends to the front porch and share stories and ideas that might just change the way that you see things.
So whether you're a pastor, a church leader, or just someone who loves the church, pull up a chair, grab some sweet tea, and let's dive in. Welcome to the Pulpit and Porch. We've got a seat waiting for you.
Robert, I had someone ask me if we actually record on a front porch, on a porch.
Almost.
We really do. And it's windy today. And so I think that my wind chimes out on the front porch might pick up in our episode. And so we might really get that front porch feel. And the dogs are laying with their face pressed up against the window right now to our studio. And so we really do have that. I mean, you just look and we're essentially on a front porch just blocked by a wall.
Yes, we very much are. We can see the porch. The dogs sit and stare through the window at us. It's a very beautiful thing. So your phone is probably going to ding right now. And it's because as we were talking right before the
Robert,
air,
I'm a professional. I turn the sound on my phone off.
You do a good job with that, but I had just texted you a minute ago and it had dinged and I was going, and so we were having a conversation and I was telling you that a buddy at church, one of our deacons at church brought in, he's a friend as well, he's a buddy of mine, but they keep cough drops for the band and speakers and things like that. And he brought these cherry cough drops in, and it just reminds me of Illudens, and I love them. And the whole story aside, and then you were like, "Oh, I'll have to get some of those," and I was like that, and the Taco Bell mints, and you're going, and I'm like, you still don't believe that Taco Bell had?
I think you made them up.
I just sent you the link of what to buy, and I found it in a Google search.
So that's the new writer in your contract for the Pulpit and Porch.
Only green Skittles and get rid of all the yellow M&Ms or whatever that whatever random band used to make.
Only Taco Bell cinnamon peppermint candy and cherry Ludens.
Yes,
all right. And I think we can work with that.
Very low maintenance, except for that one. That's kind of hard to find. So
you're wearing a Bristol Motor Speedway jacket today.
I am.
We're both big baseball fans.
We are.
And you guys lost Max Fried.
I knew
yesterday.
It was going to happen.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Max Fried, really quick, and I will make this as quick as I can. 8 seasons in the league. 4 of them, he has averaged about 155 to 160 innings. Sorry, about 160 to 165 innings. The other 4 of them, he's averaged about 40 to 45 innings. He is injured as much as he's well. And it's not like this year, ton of innings. Last year, like 60. The year before, and the 2 years before that, a lot of innings. The 3 years before that, almost nothing. He has been constantly injured. It's a very Yankee move to make. We are going to pay a guy who on paper should be a number one at any, except for the Yankees because they've got Cole. He should be a number one at almost any team he goes to. And he's a left-handed guy, throws hard. He's a good clubhouse guy. All the metrics are there. He just cannot stay healthy. I don't want to equate him to Derrick Rose because I don't know that he's as good at pitching as Derrick Rose was at being a point guard. But that guy, so good, such a bright career, and just stayed injured. I mean, the Bulls kept him for years. He bounced around a little bit after that. But that's just really, I think, where Max Fried is. And I love him. I wish him the best. I hope he gets healthy and makes all of us Braves fans regret it. But I am so thankful that our ownership and our GM and things like that, like really value players and the team as a whole more than just big contracts and trying to do something like that.
Yeah. So
anyway, back to
Bristol Motor Speedway, they have the big baseball game this coming year.
They do August.
Your Braves versus the Cincinnati Reds, and being as huge of baseball fans as we are, my family is obsessed with baseball. Even all the way down, trickling down to the kids. We just love baseball, and so thought we have a baseball game in our backyard. We're definitely going to go to this thing. Have you looked at what tickets cost for this thing?
I did, and I wouldn't want to say that you've looked in more recent than I have, and you remember, but I remember when they first dropped a couple weeks ago, I went on and looked, and I thought, it's right here. I worked at the Speedway for a while. I love those people. I love that facility, but it's not a baseball field.
No,
there are going to be
the
lots of seats that are not
you
good.
Can't see anything.
Yeah.
And you're still paying a couple $100.
If I'm just going to watch, and look, that Jumbotron is impressive. Like, I've been there when that has been put up. I never wanted to go up in it. So when they were like, hey, people can go up and do, I'm like, nah, I'm out. But I never wanted to go up there. I never wanted to be a part of that bit of it. But I have been there when that thing has gone up. I've stood next to it. I've seen the panels. It is an absolute, like, mind-blowing how they make that happen. But if all I'm going to do is watch it on that Jumbotron, I'll sit in my living room. You and I'll get together and we'll all bring appetizers and we'll grill out some and we'll watch the game together and just have a good time. But I would be miserable sitting there, even as much as I love that place. And I love the Smiths who own it. I love Jerry and his family who run it. I just can't fathom that.
The only seats that were even remotely affordable, and they really weren't all that affordable, the way that the stadium is set up, I don't think you could see anything.
Mm-mm.
I really don't think you could see anything at all.
Was it $60 or $80 a ticket for those up
those
in the
crazy
way
out in the outfield,
top,
which is not even the outfield. It's like beyond any outfield.
Yeah, because you've got the field, then you've got the track, which you can go. Is it 5 cars wide on?
Yeah.
If they get crazy in there, they can get like 5 cars, at least 4. And then you've got the stands, and this is at the top of those stands. And again, as somebody who has walked,
you're basically paying that to be in the building and watch it on a screen.
And that's the thing. There's people who get caught up on experiences, and you and I talk about these things some. Like, it was last week, and Landon and I have December birthdays, and those are coming up, and we were sitting around last week and early December, and we're just kind of going, Trans-Siberian Orchestra. I love those guys. Like, it is, I've seen them a couple times in concert, and I absolutely love it. 3 years ago right now, we went as a family, all 5 of us, and I want to say we sat 12 or 15 rows from the stage. We were on the floor. Cost us about $200 for all 5 of us to go. I don't
know how you got tickets that cheap.
It was insane. I mean, it literally was maybe $250. I'm trying to think. Was it $60 a ticket? The cheapest seat, back of the wall, $80 a ticket right now.
Yeah, we went, I want to say like 2018, probably. I've seen them twice, both times at Thompson Bowling Arena in Knoxville.
They don't come there anymore.
Oh, yeah?
They do Greenville, and then they do Charlotte.
I think they do like every other year, because they were in Knoxville last year.
Were they?
They went last year, yeah. So I think they do every other year. But we went.
I saw them in Thompson Bowling. It's a great place to see them.
It was. And we sat where the like second stage is, where they come out. We were that far back. So we were at the clear opposite end, and we were second level. So we weren't the top level, the nosebleeds, but we were the second level. And we paid about $80 a ticket to go.
Like, you could not, I mean, 80 to 120, not on the floor, is like $200 a ticket on the floor. And that's the thing. They said it cost something. We had the casino open over in Bristol, Virginia, I guess a couple weeks ago, and Blake Shelton came in and did the concert there. It might've been a month ago now. I don't know. I don't care. I just don't go to casinos. But I think I've been to one in my life, and we went to eat dinner and go bowling.
I've been to a few in my day.
But you're from Vegas.
Yeah.
And again, nothing against them. I just haven't been. We don't have them in Northeast Tennessee very often.
We had one in the lobby of our church.
Yeah, there you go.
10% goes immediately back into the plate.
Back into the plate. Oh, you won $100, but you only get 90 because we're honoring scriptures. But it was something like to get in to see him for that. He did an hour and a half show, and it was like $100 and some a ticket. And I'm just like, I love music. I love theater. I love live shows. I really enjoy those things, and especially having a kid who's a creative and wants to be around that stuff. But I just can't fathom paying that kind of money. Landon a year ago, and Steven Tyler got sick, was going to get 2 tickets to go see Aerosmith. And I think partially somebody that he really wanted to see was opening for them. Black Crowes or somebody, I don't know, somebody he really wanted to see almost more than Aerosmith. But Steven ended up having voice problems, and they postponed and eventually canceled the tour. But I think he and Melissa were going to go and see that. And he was nosebleeds, probably $120 a ticket. And he was just like, it's, Mom loves this band. It's kind of iconic. I just want to go and see it. But I don't know. I can't fathom paying that kind of stuff.
I have a real problem with that. We just had that. We've had that conversation a couple times in our house just in the last couple of weeks, because I am an experience guy. I love experience, and I love to if I'm going to spend my money on something, I want it to be on something that's going to create a memory. And so we've talked a lot in the last couple of weeks, months in our house about what would you spend money on, and looking at the Dodgers winning the World Series, seeing what some of those tickets cost just to get in the building for game one, a single seat. So if you went by yourself, if you wanted 2 seats together, you were talking way more, but a single seat that someone had a buddy that couldn't go last minute, you were looking at $1,800 just to get in the door. And Amanda, my wife, was saying, you would do that. I said, I would not pay that to go. She said, you would not pay to go see the Dodgers in the World Series, win the World Series. I said, I wouldn't. I can't justify that amount of money. And she's saying, but that was a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I said, well, maybe so when you're a Dodgers fan, but hopefully not. Hopefully there's a lot more of those with the kind of money that we're spending. But we're going, she surprised me. And I think I've said this, I know I've told you that we're going to spring training in February. And it's been a lifelong dream of mine to go to Dodger spring training. One of my favorite bands is the Killers.
Started snowing, by the way, while we're sitting here. It was pouring rain, and it's gotten so cold that it's shifting to snow.
My goodness.
Spring training, baby.
Spring training.
Come on. West Coast spring training. The Killers, anyway.
So one of my favorite bands is the Killers. Love the Killers. Seen them a couple of times, but they haven't been touring in the United States for quite a while. And so I was looking at their stuff, and they are playing a festival in Tempe, Arizona, when we will be. They're headlining a festival when we will be there in Arizona for spring training. So I was joking with Amanda and saying, the game is at like 2:00. We're going to go to the game, then we'll hop on over to this festival and see the Killers that are the headliner with Beck and Boys to Men and Jack's Mannequin, which is the lead singer, side band of Andrew McMahon, who's another one of my absolute favorite artists. But tickets to get in, a one-day ticket, like $185 a person. And she said, oh, that's not as bad as I thought you were going to say. I'm like, what do you mean that's not as bad? That's crazy.
Now, here's the thing, though. We just talked about the fact of paying $120 to get in the building, just about $80 to $120 to see just Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
And I'm not doing it.
Now, they play for 3 to 3.5 hours, and it's every traditional Christmas song you can imagine played.
It makes your eyes bleed. And your ears.
I don't know. I
love it. It's incredible.
I take earplugs. I'm going to be honest. I do. I have these little pocket earplugs that I used to have to wear when I was shooting basketball at college level. Shooting photos, sorry. I need to clarify that. When I was taking photos for basketball games at the college level, because you have pep bands in there, and some of the smaller gyms, would just beat your eardrums. And so when I would bounce around, I always had these. Talked to actually a friend of mine's son who was in the marching band, and he just said, "These are what you need to get." And
it is coming down out there,
pouring snow. I'm nervous. Like, am I going to be able to get out of here?
68 degrees yesterday.
Yes, it was. Like I took a walk. Melissa took a walk with the dogs, and I was in shorts and a t-shirt.
And now it's snowing.
But you get 4 bands, and those are 4 good bands, like Killers, Beck, and Boyz II Men. I don't know the 4th guy you're talking about, but those other 3 bands, like I know them. I mean, I know their stuff, and I mean that's different. I mean, you think about $180 divided by 4. Would you pay? $45
to see Boyz II Men? No,
I would probably pay $40 to see Boyz II Men.
Would you get down on bended knee?
I don't know, but I would definitely go to the end of the road. I mean, would
you wait till the water runs dry?
I'm out. I got nothing else. I don't know. Motown Philly. That would be interesting to me. And I think if it was like 2 or 3 bands that I enjoyed, get to dance to Boyz II Men with my wife, stand in the middle of a venue, that would be pretty cool. I would probably do that, but it's 4 bands, but I hate festivals.
Yeah. That's what I was about to say.
Using porta potties
and
like, oh my goodness. Like, it's just all of those things of, that's just not my jam. So anyway, hey.
So if you're looking for any last minute Christmas gift ideas for the hosts of the Pulpit and Porch, there's a baseball game happening at Bristol Motor Speedway that neither one of us are going to pay that kind of money. And if our spouses paid that kind of money for those seats, we'd probably be pretty upset with them. So,
hey, but speaking of seasons and events and snow, it is Christmas time.
We're right in the thick of it.
Literally right now. I mean, it is, White Christmas. All I want for Christmas is you. I sent you a podcast the other day. We were talking, and 60 songs that shaped the 90s, and All I Want for Christmas Is You was one of those songs. But it's like an hour and a half of talking about Mariah Carey and All I Want for Christmas Is You. But
how did she become the Queen of Christmas?
I think it's that song. And like, I was actually watching something the other day of how that song came together. It's really very nerdy. Me and my kid who's a music. Yeah, it was just this weird reel. The guy who kind of helped start some stuff, him and her sitting at the piano and him writing some things and this stuff. Very, very cool for people like me and him. Fast majority people don't care. But
so if she's the queen of Christmas, who is the living king of Christmas?
Oh, the living king.
You got to say Michael Bublé, right? Michael Bubbles.
I guess. So my 2 favorite Christmas songs, have we talked about this before?
I think we talked about it last year on an episode of the Small Church podcast, as it was previously called. And we did Pastor's Picks around the Christmas season.
I love Oh Holy Night is my favorite Christmas song, especially like Trans-Siberian Orchestra version of that. Just
so no lyrics.
I love it.
Just want the instrumental.
I just love that and things. But I know the lyrics, so I'm singing it in my head. The words matter a ton in that song. But Santa Claus is Coming to Town, which seems very polar opposite, by Bruce Springsteen, is by far.
God.
I love that song. And if Landon ever hears you say this, we probably won't be able to work together anymore, because Bruce Springsteen is literally one of his idols.
Come on, everybody! Santa Claus coming down.
He's such a great songwriter. He didn't write that song, of course, but I love that song and I love that version of it and all those things. But in that, I don't think he has enough stuff to be. I don't think he has enough to compete with Bublé. And I'm trying to think, like, because Christmas songs, I tend to listen to older stuff. I'll add something new. Melissa loves Walker Hayes, and so she loves his Christmas like song.
Never even heard of Walker Hayes.
Fancy Like Applebee's on a Date Night. I mean, I don't know how.
I'm guessing country.
Yeah.
I'm not
you should listen to a couple of his songs.
I don't
He's
even really
funny.
like Applebee's unless they're doing their all-you-can-eat ribs and riblets and wings thing for like $11.99.
Well, his song "Fancy Like," he's like, we're so fancy, we're fancy like Applebee's on a date night. Most people wouldn't consider that overly fancy.
Yeah, I get the reference there.
they anyway, it's a very funny song, but he has a Christmas thing. So yeah, I'll give you Buble just because I have nothing else that I feel like even comes close to that.
Yeah, so we are talking about Christmas today.
We are. Now, one of the things that you and I have talked about personally and on the show is just Christmas in this season, and I believe it was the last episode. I get confused when they all drop, but it's the last episode, and just talking about like sometimes it's hard to come up with things in a season that you feel like you need to be creative. You feel like you need to have this special way of saying things. But the reality is the Christmas story really carries itself. And for you and I both, we both know that Easter is necessary.
There was this great podcast that did a whole episode on that topic. I don't remember the name of it.
I think it was formerly called, but in that, we talked through some of those things. And then the question, and something that we talk about in private a little bit, is what happens after Christmas? Because there really feels like this because of how we navigate and move through things. It's almost like this power switch that's just pulled down, that we move directly into Dick Clark and Rockin' New Year's Eve, and with Ryan Seacrest, and so, you get to this moment and you start looking at those things and you go, okay, how do we navigate and really kind of continue? Do we really just go, hey, that was fun. Hope that worked out for you. Here we go. 2020, whatever. Next year, here we get it. How do you kind of, what happens after Christmas? How do you kind of keep that magic, and what should our role be, and some things like that?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting conversation because typically I think there's this lull that happens after Christmas, and then the build up, and it's almost kind of, we take a collective breath. Am I a bad dog owner? Let's just talk about this really quick.
It's pretty cold out there. It's actually snowing.
Is it? We haven't talked about that yet this episode. Our silver lab is literally staring and whining to get in the door. But so anyways, we oftentimes get into this lull that we're just glad that it's over. And it's such a intense season for church leaders that you have so much going on that it's not a relaxing season. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I think that most pastors and church leaders, their least favorite Christmas song is Most Wonderful Time of the Year, because it's just hectic. You've got all the different Christmas parties, staff parties, church parties. You've got Christmas parades. You've got fundraisers that you're doing, Angel Tree and Operation Christmas Child. You've got all these different things that you're pushing out in the community. You've got service projects that you're leading and being a part of. You've got Christmas dinners. Then you've got the White Elephant gift parties that you're doing with your staff. You've got Christmas Eve service that pulls you away from your family on one of the most special nights of the year. And then it's done and you can finally breathe. And so oftentimes I think as a pastor, as a church leader, we miss out on the magic of the season because we're so caught up in getting things done for everyone else. And so then when you hit December 26th or maybe January 2nd, you just take a collective sigh of relief. And I know when I was leading churches, I gave my staff a couple days off because we'd pushed so hard for so long that it didn't count against vacation days. We were closed for, like, I gave them an extended time after Christmas just to take some time off, because my hope was that they would build up and recharge. But it's so often just this lull that hits. It's almost a spiritual hangover. We'll say that is the excitement and energy of that season comes to a pass. It's a spiritual hangover. How do you typically feel after Christmas?
It's something that I definitely feel like, okay, hey, we've gotten through this. And then the mentality for me starts to shift into, how do you help people navigate into a new year? Like, people are going, okay, there's something fresh that's about to start. We've just talked about the hope that came through something new. A child is born. We have this hope we have in here. And so how do we kind of launch from that? And because like you said, December's nuts, but in my world, even now being in a small church in a small town, I mean, from kind of late September through kind of first of the year, it is just absolutely bonkers. I mean, we have Halloween, fall festival things. We have a couple of nonprofits that we do some things with that we have a week that we're kind of available and present for and do things. We've got Thanksgiving. I mean, it was like 8 to 2. I mean, it was 2:00 before I either got home or left the church or left the school this past Thanksgiving, because we were there fixing and serving meals to the community. Come out of that and you've immediately got a Christmas parade and you're getting floats together and helping the band get generator. And I didn't have to do a ton. The band does a lot of this stuff, but I'm there and I'm present and I'm around. Then you kick into the Christmas series and then all the stuff you said inside of that space. And then just being, there's tension and sometimes even like, you're just dealing with, how do you get all of the family together and how do you get to all the things that aren't church related that really kind of go, and it just starts to feel like this monstrous stress and push of just going, man, it's over. I can at least look to how do we all, like, I know how I'm feeling. If anyone else is feeling half of what I am, then we definitely need to focus on how do we establish some good practices and how do we start over, start fresh, back to the basics, all those typical January series that you step into. And, it's kind of an interesting thing there that, we can talk about some later, but yeah. So, personally, I mean, we definitely take some downtime kind of in that gap and in that week, and we do puzzles and we sit around the table and drink apple cider and that kind of stuff. It's, you try leadership and church wise, I try and give people, a rest, some over that next week, try and do more fun things around the church that kind of relax and people don't have to feel like they're carrying such a heavy weight when they come in of like, I've got to get the birth of Jesus into the brains of the little kids. And so we're going to have pancakes and pajama day and here we go. And it's just those types of things that we do that are maybe still focused, but a little more, seem more relaxed.
Yeah. Christmas night is one of my least favorite times of the year. I for sure struggle with major PCD on Christmas night, and then the day after, post-Christmas depression, and then taking down all of the Christmas decorations is always, you go from this high of putting everything back up and then the low of putting things away. I'm going to go let her in.
Literally, she's pawing at the window, coming in hot.
We want to welcome into the studio Kobe, the frozen lab. She got her way after enough whining. She's back in. But anyways, as I was saying, I really struggle. The night of Christmas really is the worst. But I think that it's so easy to quickly lose the Christmas spirit after we go from our whole world really being filled with a sense of wonder. There's just something different about the month of December. The traffic, even though just as crazy, has a little bit more patience to it. The lines in the stores, even though frustrating, are a little bit more accepted and manageable because there's just an aura in the air of joy and peace and happiness that then quickly after New Year's, like you said, after that ball drops, we quickly get back to the grumpy, rushed, hateful world that we live in the other 11 months of the year.
Well, and I think some of it too, because I was just thinking as you were talking about some things, like my life growing up was very different probably than a lot of people. We didn't spend Christmas at home. Like up till I was probably 13 or so, we lived in a different state and we would leave days before Christmas and we would head to to see where my grandparents lived. And so we bounced between two different homes. We stayed, I mean, they were only a few minutes apart, but we had to stay at both houses. So, and that was fine. I'm not upset about that. I love both sets of my grandparents greatly. They were amazing. But like, we spent time at dad's parents, we spent time at mom's parents. I mean, and like we lived up here, and Christmas Day kind of came and went with us not being at home. And it was always this rush, and it was getting to the next thing and doing the next thing and always being there. And I don't know. I mean, I talk to family sometimes, and they're just like, we have 6 places we've got to be between 6 o'clock Thanksgiving, 6 o'clock Christmas Eve to 6 o'clock Christmas night. I mean, we've got 6, 7, 8 places we've got to be and do. And, it's just a ton of stuff that really drives people. And I think that same thing happens. I think that same thought and idea of just how do we get from point A to point B and do this is so busy at Christmas Day that when it's over, it's almost just like, I don't even have to get to the first of the year to get to that exhale. At Christmas time, when everybody goes to bed, it's like, finally. And I mean, and it kind of comes to that space. And so I don't necessarily have that feeling, that rhythm, because we live pretty close. But our days are a little bit different. I mean, we wake up, we have to drive to go see family. And so we spend, round trip 3-ish plus hours on the road that day. And we spend a few hours sitting around and, eating and hanging out and watching football or whatever it is that we're doing. And which is on Netflix this year, by the way. So be prepared.
You won't be able to see it.
You won't be able to see it. It'll be like the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson fight. But the whole thing is just, I think there's that rush comes at a very much even earlier space, and maybe even more now with where families are and where the busyness of life is.
I want to back up a little bit and discuss something that you just said, that I have a real problem with Roger Goodell and the NFL and the fact that Christmas Day belongs to the NBA. Traditionally, that's Christmas afternoon. You sit and you watch the NBA. And now this is 2 years in a row that the NFL has come in and said, yeah, the big boys are coming to play.
Well, last year it was on a Monday, and they always do Monday Night Football. So we got a leap year this year because it's election year, but it's not because it's election year, but it plays out that way. But we got the leap year, so it bumped it from Monday. So if this is the first time they've done it on a day that's not their day, which they have Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, some Fridays. I mean, pretty much that's about the only day they don't have something on throughout the year. So,
all right, little side note there that we're past. You just said that. I wanted to bring that up. What role do you think the church plays in keeping the Christmas spirit throughout the year?
You and I talked about some of this, like I said, right before we got on. And so we've got a responsibility, and I will say I haven't always maybe done this I still don't do it with the intentionality that I should, but we have a responsibility to keep the reason for the season at the front of people's minds all year long. And again, we talk about hope. I mean, we have these songs that we sing, and we only sing them once a year, unless you're Bruce. Miss Bruce. He all the time always had Christmas going. But it was just one of those things that we have these things, and we talk about this hope. We talk about hope will come, and that we tell people all year long you should have hope, but very rarely do we ever refer back to Christmas in this season. And I should say, maybe instead of Christmas, the birth of Christ as this kind of launch pad of hope.
I think even you look at the season of Advent and love, hope, joy,
peace. Joy. Yeah.
And you look at these themes that we carry throughout the season of Advent that are the season of Christmas. They are the essence of Christmas. It's why it's so evident in the coming of Jesus and in the birth of our Savior. And oftentimes we hit January and those themes tend to take a back seat to other, what we consider pressing topics like starting your new year off right. Making good resolutions and getting in.
Yeah, spiritual disciplines or lots of people do prayer series. I mean, and again, we do those things. I'm sure you've done those things, and those topics in themselves aren't bad. But what's the foundation of those
shouldn't
topics?
They be shrouded in love and joy and peace and hope?
They've got to be built on Christ, and we just came out of a season. And so those are things, for me this year, something that's really kind of set heavy in my heart in the last month or two has been the yoke is easy, the burden's light. And I've got this kind of thought, and I'm going to mess this up this year at some point in time. I'm going to forget about it one week, but I've got this forefront of this thought of the yoke is easy, the burden's light. Matthew 11, 1 John 5, 5:3. He eases our burdens. I've got this thought of how do I weekly help people, because we can't continue to sign contracts with worry, fear, and anxiety if our hope is in Christ. Like, we have to put our hope into Him. We have to let go of those sins and those struggles that we sit in. And so I want to tie this idea of like, hey, why, inside of this text, here's the tension. Here's what causes us to be a heavy yoke, a heavy burden. Here's what Christ called. Here's how the Father is set up to make that something that's lighter, that you don't have to feel the weight and the burden. And I think in that same way, there needs to be this voice of hope of the little baby boy that came, that provided this way, that permeates our teaching, that if you teach in a side of a series, then that should permeate at least, once or twice in a 3, 4, 5, 6 week series, that is kind of, hey, the bottom line, let's not forget kind of Christmas all year long type mentality. If you teach exegetically, it's probably a lot easier. I mean, because the crimson thread of the Son of God is through those things. And so I agree with you 100% that I don't know why we step away. I just know that for me, these are things that have been on my heart the last couple of months. And then we both throw around ideas. You definitely bring more to the table than I do. But this was one that when you sent it, and I started to go through it and work through those things, these were things that kind of came up in my heart, in my mind.
Well, yeah, we have songs that we sing that Christmas all year round, and I wish that I could feel the spirit of Christmas all year round. And why don't we? I think Justin Bieber maybe sings that or something. I don't know. But we focus so often, and probably most of our listeners are teaching on this or have taught on it, on Luke chapter 2. But we tend to only focus on the beginning of Luke chapter 2. And I love the end of Luke chapter 2, when you have the shepherds that have come in and they've experienced something that they experienced Christmas. Right. In its very essence, they experienced Christmas. They didn't leave from that and say, all right, back to work. Let's develop a strategic plan. Let's set our resolutions now. Let's talk about how we're going to get our sheep to be more productive this year. Let's talk about how we're going to spend more time caring for. No, they went back and they told everyone. It says they could not stop talking about what they'd experienced.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of it's such a, Luke is such a, like the first couple chapters are so slammed packed, and you think about this kind of middle of that chapter in Luke 2, and then you rattle into the words of preteen, the only time that we hear from kind of pre-30s Jesus really, but that preteen Jesus when he speaks there in Luke, later in Luke 2. But, in that, Luke, it's kind of 17 through 20, where you're talking about, it says they had seen him, then they spread the word concerning what had been told them about this child, and all who heard it were amazed. My favorite.
You throw in a little bit of Mary there.
And I'm going to be honest, like, I feel like that this is something I just spend, and I need to spend a lot more time in this space, because there's several times in the scriptures, but Mary treasured all these things in her heart. And I just love that relationship. I love that thought. Mary pondered on these things. Mary treasured these things. Mary thought on these things. And I love the fact that in the moment, she wasn't just like, look at all of this great stuff that's happening. How blessed am I? She was like, it's like she just sat and she said, and pondered and looked on these things.
But then hit verse 20.
The shepherds returned home, glorifying and praising God for all the things they had heard and seen, which were just as they had been told. And so they kind of went back telling and doing and continuing to share what they had just experienced.
I love it.
Our sermons should be better. People aren't going back and doing that. We're missing out.
You're not telling them enough.
I'm not doing it. Go tell it on the mountain.
And so what can we do as church leaders to tell the story in a way that prompts the people that are listening to go and share the story with everyone they meet, to go back to their places, to go back to their homes, to go back to their work, to go back to their communities, to go back to their Rotary clubs and their jobs and tell of what they've heard?
I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not trying to kind of wimp out on this, and I'm actually really intrigued. Actually, in my notes, I put I'm excited to hear Tony's answer to this. I know we have a responsibility as teachers of the Bible to somewhat inspire, but if people are following Jesus, they truly have a relationship with him, they have the Holy Spirit indwelling inside of them. The scriptures, if all we did was stand up and read a scripture and just say, hey, we're going to sing for a minute, we're going to read some scriptures, we're going to pray, and we're going to go home. There is enough in that without our commentary whatsoever for God and the Holy Spirit to work in our life. And so part of this for me, and this is going to seem like a cop-out, is people need to take their faith seriously. And they need to come in and stop going like, hey, I'm not sure. Hey, I wish that this was a little more. If they just, and look, I get it. I'm not for everybody. I don't want everybody in Irwin to come to my church. There's a lot of good churches there, and I'm thankful I get to meet a new pastor who's moving to our area tomorrow, and I'm super excited about that. And we get to grab a coffee, and I want him to shepherd and lead well the people that he's got in his life that he comes into contact with. But at the same time, as followers of Jesus, we should be taking our faith seriously. We develop our own faith through fear and trembling. And I think that some of this is we can teach and pound and yell and whisper, whichever route we want to go with it. We can encourage people to never sleep, and we can encourage them to go take a nap. We can do all the things that we want to do to drive people towards this. But at some point in time, a follower of Jesus has to get up and go live this out on their own. I think you're going to be better at me than answering this part of it.
Every time that I get the opportunity, the privilege to speak to people, one of my main goals is I want them to leave I want them to walk away from what I've said having questions. I want them to walk away having heard something that causes them to think and ask questions.
Oh, you don't. So at mine, I'm like, well, I do great with that. People go, what in the world was he talking about? So you're not talking about that though. You're talking about, oh man, what did Jesus mean here?
Yeah. I want them thinking. I want them going to Cracker Barrel, beating the Baptist to Cracker Barrel, or if I'm at a Baptist church, beating the Methodist to Cracker Barrel. And I want them saying, so what did you think about this?
Does the Christian church not go to Cracker Barrel?
Oh, no, that we got to beat the Baptists because the Baptists already get there. That's why the Christian church, typically gets their services done by 11:30 so that we can beat the Baptists there.
And see, y'all also do communion every week, so you're not quite as hungry. You've got a
right.
little bit
it's
in
an appetizer.
Yeah,
it's an appetizer.
I actually that's one of the things I love about the Christian church is just the communion every week. I know we don't do that in our rhythm, and I didn't grow up that way, but we do communion a lot more at Northridge than I ever did at any church I was at growing up. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, so I want them asking questions, and I want them coming to me or shooting me emails saying, hey, can we explore this a little bit more? In fact, we did when I was preaching every week, we did a thing. I would spend 20, 25, 30 hours a week writing a message. And inevitably, I have what I've immersed myself in for several weeks and spent hours upon hours researching, writing. And now I have 40 minutes to communicate all of that. And so inevitably, there was always a lot more that I wish that I could get to, and I never did. And so we did a thing every week called the PS. And, you know, at the end of a letter, you have your PS, postscript. We did the PS, post sermon. And it was things that I wish that I had time to get to, but just didn't have time. And we'd put it out on our website, put it out on social media that people could go.
Do you imagine podcasting would have been around back then?
Oh, it would have been great. Yeah.
You'd have broke the internet.
Shut it down. And it was these opportunities for people to ask questions.
Act like you're 100 years old. Act like you're C.S. Spurgeon or something, like sitting here and going, back in my day, we didn't have them fancy computers.
I remember when we made the decision to not do cassette tapes anymore of our sermons, have a place out in the lobby where you could pick up the cassette tapes,
cassettes and CDs of your weekly sermon.
And you could subscribe, and it became free. I remember what a big deal that was, because we were giving up revenue, because the cassette tapes and the CDs, they generated revenue. And now we're saying, we're just going to give this for free to people. They're just going to be able to go online and listen to it. Like, yeah, we're going to do it free. It's Word of God for free. Amazing. Great concept.
Like, you've lost your mind.
But I loved the idea of causing people to think,
that's a great thought.
Them take what we've taught in a very limited time here and want to dive deeper into it, want to do more with it. The greatest thing was when you'd go home and you'd hop on Facebook on Sunday afternoon and you'd see that people had said, my pastor said this today. What are your thoughts on this? Here's a quote that I jotted down from my pastor today, because what you said had caused them to think so much, or opened up a new idea or concept or understanding of Jesus in a way that they couldn't wait to share that with other people, either through social media or through conversations around the dinner table or in their office in the cubicle the next day. And that was always my goal. Is how do I get them talking? How do I get them thinking beyond just coming and checking something off of their box? That I did this, I walked out and never think about it again. And when it comes to something as profound and fundamental as the birth of Jesus, those themes that we've carried on throughout December, I think that we do have a responsibility to continue the conversation, to keep those on the forefront of our parishioners, for lack of a better term, their hearts and their minds throughout the year, because it's the essence of what we are and who we are.
Yeah. And I think that's the interesting part of this, is like when we start to think about how do we do this as people who, like, I still communicate the vast majority of weeks a year. You still communicate a lot. I mean, and it's more though in filling in at a church or in churches that you're coaching. I get to
go
with.
Be a one-hit wonder.
Yeah, and you're coach, which means you should be able to tie this in easily, and you're just preaching one sermon 40 times a year. But
right.
Excuse me. But in that, this idea of taking the truth of Emmanuel, God is with us, letting that shape the way that we live our faith. I mean, in the ordinary daily parts of our lives, it does seem complicated. Like, and it sounds bad. It seems complicated to kind of mentally get yourself to a place that you can do this, God with us, at every sermon, maybe not every sermon, but once, twice a month, you're kind of continuing to bring this idea of the birth of the Savior and this connection point to our lives. I don't even know that it has to be the
birth of the Savior, but what you just said, Emmanuel, God with us, that is what makes Christianity so unique and so special.
Matthew 1:23
is that our God doesn't ask us to reach for him.
Yeah.
That he came to us. And that's universal in June. That's universal in September. That is still truth in February. And this idea, maybe you're not 18 times a year talking about a manger scene, but the fact that God came near, God came to us. I love the way that I think it was Max Lucado that said it, that majesty in the midst of the mundane.
Listen, I did that book. The first year we were dating, we read through that book together around Christmas time. God Came Near.
Yeah.
And I need to reread that. I haven't read it in 25 years and good gracious, 26, 27 years now. And no, it's a beautiful thing. And I don't think that's the tension. And I love about this conversation is we don't live our lives that way. And I say we, and I just kind of do a general encompassing. People might go, man, I totally live my life that way. Okay, fantastic. I mean, that is awesome. And I really am. And I'm not saying that sarcastically. That is fantastic. You're doing that. How are you leading your people? Is the congregation, the flock, the parishioners, however you want to say that. But I had a friend the other day, we were talking about being disciples that make disciples and this call of Matthew 28, Acts 1. How do you live that out? And he said, here's the thing I had to come to understand. I'm going to do everything I can to lead the church and then my relationships where I live, work, and play. He's like, but I have a built-in space where I get to live this out with a wife and 3 kids. And I do this with my family, but it was a double down thing for me. When he said it the way he said it, I'm going, okay, it's time to take 2 steps forward and no steps back on this, and this. How do you live this out in a way, if you really do live that God is with you, how are you, I want to say empowering, and that's not the right word. And I want to say implementing, and that's not the right word. Impressing that on your children, on your spouse, on your neighbors, the people that you're like, when you walk out your door and they see your ugly inflatables in the front yard and you see their ugly inflatables in the front yard and you both laugh and go, ha ha, and you walk on. How are you impressing the goodness of who God is and what he is in that space and in that moment on those people?
Yeah, I love that. And if you just look in the time, what Christmas means for nearly 2,500 years, the world had been longing for this God, this Messiah, this Redeemer to come, right? And it had been this longing for almost 2,500 years to be near to God. And the only way that you could be near to God was to go somewhere, to go to the tabernacle, to be near to God. Sure, you had God who was evident in a pillar of fire, or a pillar of smoke during the day, but getting to God was something that you had to do. And now in this one moment, as you just said, God came and was with us. And as believers, we have that hope, we have that joy, we have that peace that God is with us every single day. And that's something that can be tied into 52 weeks a year.
Yeah.
That whatever you're experiencing in life, you maybe feel like God is far and God is distant. You maybe feel like you have been waiting on this superhero God, this Redeemer to come and pull you out of your wilderness. For it may feel like it's been 2,500 years for you. God is with you. That's a promise. That's a hope. That's a joy. That's a peace that we have every single day as followers of Jesus. And that's something that is very easy to tie into just about anything that you could possibly want to talk about over the course of 48 other Sundays outside of the Advent season, 47 other Sundays out of the Advent season. But I also think we have a responsibility as church leaders to provide opportunities for our people to live that out.
Yeah. And, one of the things that you kind of, mentioned it, in this space of implementing these is, how do we implement this? And then one of the questions that you just asked, and I've just been processing this over the last several days is how can spiritual practices like prayer and devotions focus on the themes of Christmas throughout the year? And the reality is that the starting place, I mean, if you really sit and you reflect and you take the Lord's Prayer and you're taking this model of our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come. I mean, I understand, like if you just start to process what did it look like for God to bring his kingdom. I mean, part of him sending was his hope of his son. And it's so easy just in reflecting in this model prayer that Jesus gives us in Matthew 6 to just to reflect in and be thankful inside of prayer for the birth of the son, for the hope that came, and how that radically shapes and changes our life every day. And we look for God so much in the busy and the big, and he comes so many times in the simple and what we would call mundane. And I think that it's so important. And this has been such a great reflection for me because, I've talked about this a ton. I'm a big fan of Comer's Practicing the Way book, and prayer, fasting, solitude, silence, generosity, scripture, witness, community, Sabbath, service, these 9 practices, things that Jesus did that we get a chance to kind of do. And how do I process and think about the goodness of God, and that he is with me, that he is with my friends, that he is with my town, in this country, in this planet, that he is with us and he is journeying alongside of us. How do I process that? That was a great question for me when you just said, man, how can spiritual practices, because you were just talking about this step, and I hope I didn't jump too far, but when you were talking, I was just going, man, this is the thing that kept running through my brain. How do I implement that in my life? And those are the things that just that starting point of prayer is even an easy way to do that.
Yeah, and we are just about out of time for today, for this episode of the Pulpit and Porch. As we're going, this is the last time that we're going to be on the air before Christmas. And so, is there any closing thoughts as we're closing out this year? I know next week we're going to talk some New Year's stuff, but as where we're sitting right now, we're just a few weeks away. When this episode will air, I think is going to be about 2 days before Christmas, maybe the day before Christmas, actually. Maybe.
Drops on Tuesdays, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The day before.
Day before, yeah. Christmas Eve is, so you and your family can gather around the fireplace and turn on the Pulpit and Porch.
Yule logs, eggnog, just, gather up on the porch, watch it snow.
New Christmas tradition.
There you go. Oh man, how do they say it at the Masters? From our house to yours. The Masters, tradition like no other. What would I say? We're actually doing a series called God with Us at Church.
The irony.
It is so funny. And in that, just this past week, just talking about God is with us, and he's with us in these different spaces. And I think that I know I can, and so I'm not going to tie anybody else into this. I get really kind of caught up in some things, and I let it kind of either shut me down, and I sit and kind of I think my boys call it doom scrolling on some social media platform. I'm not very culturally hip, so I don't know. Or I can try and outwork things or outthink it and stuff like that. And something that I have found a way to do a little bit, and I don't do well, is to rest. And I just don't think we acknowledge how many times Jesus got away, that he just got quiet, that he turned off the noise and he rested. He rested in the Father. He rested physically. He took a nap. He did these things that were a little bit different. And I'm not saying you can just go sleep at your office for the next, whatever, how many days or weeks until Christmas hits for you, but until you was doing things. But I think in a season, if you can find a way to, catch 20 minutes in the day, do something where you can set aside and get into that space. It is a place that you can just really kind of exhale into. And so I know it's a lot. Leading is not easy. Leading carries an immense amount of weight to it, as biblically it says it should. But God also set parameters. The yoke is easy, the burden's light for you as well as for the people you're leading. And if it feels unnecessarily heavy, just find a way to step away for a minute, even as crazy as it is. I promise you, you taking 30 minutes just to go sit in the quiet, to pray, to take a nap, to be in solitude, to fast for a meal and have to cancel that, for a lunch that maybe is just something you do. I mean, skip a lunch that you go to with a bunch of people that maybe you just need one day away, that you fast through it. I think those are things that just really start to change the perspective.
I think in my closing thoughts, I would just like to say that for all of our guys, ladies, leaders that are listening out there, that you're in the middle of a crazy, hectic season. Hearing this, hopefully on the 24th, maybe a couple days after, I hope that you'll take some time away from all the craziness of this Christmas season and all of the obligations and responsibilities that you have to just sit and reflect personally on the fact that God is with you in this. Celebrate. Keep the themes of Christmas, love, joy, hope, peace, evident throughout the year. But please, please take down your Christmas lights. And that is all the time that we have for this edition of the Pulpit and Porch. We want to wish you a very Merry Christmas for Robert and myself, to you, your family, your churches, all of your friends. We hope that you have a wonderful Christmas, that you enjoy this time, that you can rest in this time, and that you can experience the true joy of the Christmas season and the fact that God is with us. I want to encourage you to like the Pulpit and Porch podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Share the Pulpit and Porch. Communicate with us on social media or on our website at higherministries.com, or find us at Higher Ministries on Facebook and Instagram. We'd love for you to be a part of the conversation. Again, we hope that you have a wonderful, very Merry Christmas, and we'll talk to you next week as we explore a little bit of New Year's here on the Pulpit and Porch. Merry Christmas.